If you're a PMU artist and your brow mapping looks like this, then you need to watch this free tutorial so I can teach you how to make it look like this. Welcome to a concept that I like to refer to as reverse mapping. Mapping is truly an art form. It's extremely important to understand the products that you're using and the correct ways to use them. And I'm sure you're well aware of the importance of precision when it comes to brow mapping and lip mapping. Everything is dependent on how perfect that shape is before you start tattooing. With reverse mapping, you have a very clear visual of exactly where you need to tattoo. It's my go-to mapping technique for lips and brows. So stick with me for this tutorial and I am going to share everything I know about reverse mapping with you. Hello and welcome to the carved mapping tutorial. First, let me bust my glove open as I like to do right before filming. This happens all the time. Okay, we're gonna get our mapping brushes out and ready. And for our first client here in the first portion of this tutorial, we're gonna be mapping out for a touch-up. So this client, her name is Naz. She's a great friend of mine. She's actually in our powder brow course and her brows are like 3 years old. They look so good. Anyways, we're gonna map them out. So I'm starting with the slightly wider brush, the larger of the two, and the white concealer from our Tones Artist Concealer Palette. Here you can see I'm resting my hand on her face and very light motion back and forth. I'll be swiping the brush. Alternatively, you can do one longer swipe or these small little sketching motions. It's up to you. So load up your brush. You don't need a lot of product and you don't need to press hard with this brush. Just a tiny little sweeping motion with the lightest pressure will deposit a really nice, sharp, crisp line. Now, if this was a new client, you'd want to make sure you measure out her brows first using mapping string or a ruler, whatever you'd prefer. Here I'm showing you after you load the brush up with some concealer, you can very lightly pinch the bristles together to make them even tighter, just like so. It's going to give you an even sharper line. So I already showed you how to swipe back and forth. This is a stamping method as well, so you can place the brush down and pull upwards. I like to do this on the top of the brows or to prep, so I will lay down my concealer like this, and then afterwards with our smaller detailer brush, like you can see here, I'll pick up just a tiny pinch of concealer and I'll tighten up those lines even more using the back and forth sketching motion. So again, these bristles and these brushes were designed to make your lives a lot easier because they're very short and dense. You don't have to do a lot of work. The brush does a lot of the work for you. And a lot of other mapping brushes out there, the bristles are longer, so they're more flexible and you get more wiggle with them, which is going to prevent you from having really sharp, crisp lines like you can create with the carved mapping brushes. Okay, so our first brow is done. Now we're gonna go in and do the second brow. I'm doing a little time lapse here so you can see I'm placing the product down. Now I'm going in and stamping, using that stamping motion to pull the product upwards a little bit, fan it out on the skin. Next, I'm gonna carve out the bottom edge. You can see how I'm placing my hand underneath, so coming around, stabilizing with my pinky in a very light pressure, feathery motion. Now I'm doing the stamping and pulling downwards. And we're just about done. I like to use this little finishing touch here. It just connects the centers and helps me to see that everything is aligned nice and straight. And I'll do the same on the top here. We are going to be tinting Naz's brows next, so this is a great way to do it. And here's the finished product. You can see she really isn't ready for a touch-up yet, so tint it is. Okay, quick mix of my tint and I'm putting it on the back of my glove here. And then I'm gonna be going in with my smaller detail brush, starting at the tail, stamping in the product just at the very tip. And you're gonna see now how I use it. So I'm starting at the bottom and I'm brushing upwards. Now I'm going to the top and brushing downwards. So this is gonna help create that really sharp line, and I'm meeting right to the tip of the concealer. So not going over the concealer, just meeting where that concealer is placed and pulling the product into the center of the brow. Everything stays nice and clean. It's not messy at all. It's a great way to work to keep everything nice and sharp. The nice thing about these brushes is you do get two options as far as size goes. So, you can choose to use the detail brush when you want to, or if you want to use the larger brush, it really depends. Depends how you're feeling and what you're trying to achieve. I really like the larger one for concealer and the smaller one for tinting. And also if you've got a little tiny brow to work with, that smaller brush comes in really handy. Okay, so we're wiping off the tint now, cleaning her up. I'm using Ink Wash, which is our product. It's my favorite. And the last step with a new detail brush is just to clean up the edges with a little bit of concealer for our after photos. I love doing this. It's a little highlighter. So again, just really light pressure because we're not trying to pack it in like we did with the mapping. This is how I work. Did you guys see that? With 2 brushes in one hand so I can swap back and forth. I love it. So feathering in that little bit of concealer, that skin tone concealer, and here are the final results. Okay, on to lips. This is one of my favorite techniques for lips by far. I'm starting with my larger brush and very light pressure, going in with a slight swiping motion, that etching motion back and forth to create a very tiny crisp line before blending it outwards into the skin. This technique is ideal because when you're then tattooing the lips, your needle is not fighting through lip liner. If you're using like a red pencil, lip pencil to pre-draw, you're then fighting through that to get pigment into the skin. With this technique, you're only working on the lip. There's nothing else on the lip. So you're only concealing the outer portion of the lip, making your shape really symmetrical and clean and clear and easy to see and work with. So again, here I am going in with these tiny little lines. Look at how light. Very, very light pressure is all you need. So once I get this tiny little line in, now I go in with the brush and pull downwards. So you can see when I'm stretching the lip, I tend to work on the lip so my finger is stretching away from me so that I'm not smudging the concealer. And again, now I'm doing the top with the same technique. So swiping that concealer on and then stamping and feathering out upwards to make sure everything is perfect. Now onto the Cupid's bow. This would be a great time to switch to the small detail brush. If you have a tiny lip that you're working on, you can get into that area nicely, but I'm still working with my larger brush right now. Turning her a little bit, stretching, being careful not to smudge the concealer, and finishing up with this side of the lip. Light back and forth, sweeping motion, stamping upwards and cleaning up. Okay, next step is really important. We're gonna take a new brush. This is why it's important to buy multiples, you guys. Dip into a tiny little bit of alcohol, pinch nice and tight, and now we're using it to clean up any little edges that we need to redefine the lips and make sure everything is extremely sharp. And here are the finished mapping results. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you love your tones palette and your carved mapping brushes, and I can't wait to see what you do with them.